for Wednesday the 3rd of September 2025, and great to see a full gallery. Could I now just invite the Deputy Mayor to open our meeting with karakia, please?
Tēnā koe, Your Worship, o te rā, tēnā tātou katoa I hui mai nei I tēnei rā. He rā nanui, ngā mihi ki a koutou o ku kai kaunihera me ngā rangatira o tēnei kaunihera tēnā koutou. Ka tākiri ake ngā haiata o tamanui te rā ki te whenua ki te rāwhiti kāwatia. Ka hauku a papatuanuku, ka ngaru I te whenua, haere mai rangi nui e tū iho nei, te oha o te rā, te oha o te pō, haumi e, hui e, tāi ki e. And with that karakia, Your Worship, that's a karakia talking about the day, the light, the energy of the environment, protecting us and looking after us and everyone together. Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Well, good morning again, everybody, and kia ora. Look, we have a big agenda today, so we will be trying to keep to time. Just explaining that the meeting has been recorded, is being live streamed on our Council's YouTube channel. In terms of housekeeping and safety procedures, unlike the event of hearing an alarm, we will exit near the nearest fire exit. Those are the green signs. We will evacuate to the assembly area, which is the clock tower in the square to Maraahine. It's a non-smoking and non-vaping facility, so if you need to partake, you'll have to go well outside. Again, unlike the event of needing a defibrillator, that is located at the entranceway in the ground floor. If there are any issues or incidences, please report them to our committee administration. Could I just acknowledge that for those, especially officers and perhaps presenters, if we could just say your first name and your title in the first instance, that'll help with people online. And we do have Councillor Billy Meehan zooming in from online as well. So we will go to our first part of the agenda, and that's around apologies. And we will have a recommendation to Council that we receive the apologies from Councillor Billy Meehan for early. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. If there's no comments, I'll ask you to vote, please. Can you just check you voted? It's passed 15 votes for, none against. I don't think we've got quite right. No, I just didn't vote. Okay, sorry. We've taken Billy's as well. It's 16 for, none against. Thank you. All right, just moving through, number 3 on the agenda there is notification of additional items. I haven't received any. There's none from the floor. Declarations of interest, again, I haven't been notified of anything. Councillor Wood.
Apologies, Mr Mayor, I'll just declare a conflict of interest in item 26 in part 2 and I'll withdraw from that debate.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's noted. All right. Before we get into public comment, I just want to make a small tribute to Steve Stanyard. Now, Steve unfortunately passed away last week, and he was fittingly acknowledged on the front page of the Manawatu Standard this morning. And just, if I could just say a few words just on behalf of Council, and if anybody else would like to say anything, you're very welcome to as well. So look, just want to acknowledge the recent passing of Steve. He was a Civic Award recipient, a great advocate for the city, and his contribution has been significant. He was an Australian, but he became a New Zealander very much so. And it's sad that he lost his lengthy battle with cancer in his hometown of Sydney, aged 58. He was the founding head of School of Sport and Exercise at Mass University in 2023, and for 16 years was a professor of exercise sport. Steve, he was a former professional road cyclist, and he really brought the love of cycling and sport and recreation to this country and to this city. In 2012, he won the gruelling Wellington to Auckland Cycling Challenge, including the King of the Mountains title. He served as a board member of Bike Manawatu from 2010 to 2018 and was its president from 2016 to 2018. He established the Greasy Chain Trust, dedicated to promoting cycling culture in the Manawatu and Palmerston North, and was its chair until 2020. In 2016, he negotiated with the world governing body, the UCI, to launch the Manawatu Gravel and Tar cycle race. That became an international race, and as race director, he also added the Gravel and Tars La Femme event for female cyclists, and it was offering equal prize money to the men's race. It was one of the first events in the world to do so, and it earned Steve an international award, and he then served on Cycling New Zealand's board from 2022 to 23. In his post-Massey years, Steve got into the hospitality sector, and he opened Ciclista Espresso Bar in George Street, and he also gained a reputation as a thought-provoking and witty columnist for the Manawatu Standard. I always enjoyed his articles. Where in April last year, he proposed that the New Zealand government perhaps think about moving the capital from Wellington to Palmerston North. Some might say that's still a good idea. At the beginning of the year, he sold the coffee bar and he moved back to Sydney for a level of cancer treatment unavailable in New Zealand. Steve was a really accomplished man. Excuse me. And he did earn the city's highest honour civic award in 2023. So our deep condolences to his wife, Catherine, who of course works here in council, and to his family. Could we please just stand for a moment's silence? Thank you. All right, we will move on now to our public comment, and we have a couple today. So to those that are speaking, unfortunately we've only given you 3 minutes, but we do have to stick to that. So if I could first invite our Kiwi Canoe polo people, Amy Walters and Greg Sawyer. And I think Georgia is coming as well. Oh, there's others as well. So Amy, maybe, yeah, you might to introduce everybody and the things they brought with them.
Tēnā koutou katoa I huhu mai nei I tēnei ata, kei te mihi au ki te mea, tēnā koe Grant, kei te kaunihira, tēnā koutou. Kei te mihi au ki ngā tangata, me ngā rohu, ki roto I tēnei wharitarei. Tēnā koutou, e whakawhetai ana mātou mō tēnei kōrero. Ko hene rupe toku marae, ko Ngāti Parae toku iwe, ko hene rupe toku I, ko Amy Walters toku ingoa, ko Pereniti au o Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo. Morena, kia koutou. My name is Amy Walton. I am the president of Manawatu Canoe Polo. I hope that hasn't eaten my mihi and morena to you all into our 3 minutes. So kia ora tatou, my name is Amy Walters. I'm the president. This is Greg Sawyer to my right. He is the secretary and the player and a fix-it guy of everything in our club. And these are two of our highest performing athletes within the club that do massive, Georgia Wheeler and Connor Taylor. We are here to really briefly have a kōrero with you about our club and why it's important to our community and where we are with our challenges at the moment and where we are wanting to go going forward. If any of you don't know, I'm not a player, I'm not a coach, I'm not a referee, so I liken canoe polo to basketball on water in a boat. So if you don't know, this is where we roll. Our primary home is at Hokowhitu Lagoon. We have over 300 members on our club, 150 who played during the season who are on the water. And we love it down there, and we are so grateful for the facilities that we have at the moment, but it is insufficient for our needs and for us and our growth going forward, and we have a lot of challenges. We have 150 people training through the season, October to June. We are training on 3 courts, 22 teams over 6 grades. We play from 5 to 7:30, 5 days a week, most weekends. We have beginners who are 8 years old in little boats learning to paddle to go forward, and we have our world-class athletes who are performing on the highest level and achieving with minimal input and support from the wider space of canoe polo in New Zealand and across the country, and they are achieving. We are inclusive and we work hard to create a welcoming community that creators for all abilities and all needs. Our challenges right now, our court space, we are struggling to train effectively. We have congestion with other users of the Hokowhitu Lagoon, wakaama, longboaters. Our neighbours are not happy. They are not happy with our presence. We are struggling for storage. We don't have infrastructure. We don't have proper changing rooms, parking, car parks. The water quality, I know ads come in about clearer water, fantastic, but we need to spray with the weeds and it's going to get murky. The depth, we had a player roll the other day who rolled into weeds, couldn't get up, had to wet exit their boat. We are losing events. We have had enforcement from School Sport New Zealand as a directive to not use the lagoon because of water quality, and so that event will be going to Hawke's Bay. Again, very grateful for the space that we have. It's not fit for purpose for us as a club at the moment and where we want to go. I had a call yesterday from Aaron from Parks and Reserves and from Anne-Marie. They want to move some of our courts because the neighbours are complaining, and I totally get that. If I lived on the Lagoon and I had people out there playing and I could not go and sit and have a cup of tea in my backyard after mahi, I would have the same. I would be saying the same. So we need a solution. We have been championing for years to try and find a new home. It's not only our problem, it's a wider community, and we want to work to solve that. We have done a facility concept outline plan. We have done a needs assessment plan. We understand with the process, the next step now is a feasibility report, then a business case study. What we want to do, and what I know, and I'm really grateful, and we are really grateful that Leonie Hapita has tabled as a notice of motion to put through that we combine the business case and the feasibility study, as well as asking council for $10,000 towards that. We understand it's about $60,000 to $65,000 to go with that process. We have money we have putia in our kitty that we are willing to contribute. We have also highlighted funders that we can go to support this next step process. We also understand that there are places within our region who have identified that they are willing to work with us to find a new space and to welcome us there. So we need a solution. We're not winning, we're challenges. It's not only for our club, but also for the wider community. So we would really ask that the council members please back our next step in the going forward. We need minimum 4 courts, we need more space, we need to grow. They're talking about worlds coming to New Zealand that could be here. We're really asking today, and I'm kind of begging because I'm down there and I'm dealing with this every day, and I'm dealing with calls from neighbours who are not happy. I'm
So
trying
Amy,
to problem solve.
we're well over time. Perhaps we get the gist of what you're talking about. Perhaps just you quickly introduce your gold medal winners there.
Right, so good. This is Georgia.
Yeah, so despite the issues we have at the Lagoon, we are a very successful country, and being so small, us going to Europe and going to China and going to America, we bring home some bling. So we've got bronze at the World Games 2022, silver at the World Games 2025. We just came home a few weeks ago, and we won gold at the World Champs last year. So despite all these challenges, we are doing incredibly well. But imagine how much better we could do if we had all the facilities that, say, Germany has. Yeah.
We need a few euros. All right. Well, look, thank you. We have run out of time. We'll hopefully have a break where some elected, if you hang around, some elected members might want to speak to you. But look, thank you for coming in. We understand your needs. Congratulations on your success. I think it's one of the few sports too that has its national sporting organisations based here, isn't it? The executive director and everything for the New Zealand Association is based here, is that right?
We are a community of volunteers, and our people are spread around the country, but a bulk of what's coming out of New Zealand is coming out of Manawatu.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Ngā
Thank
mihi
you.
nui kia koutou.
All right. Now, Rami. So I invite Rami Al-Jab, who's speaking on the petition for time for action. Rami, welcome.
Oh, I didn't know how that works. Kia ora, rangatani, ka Rami Al-Jab, ahau. Salam, greetings and peace to the council and all. My name is Rami Al-Jab. I'm a proud Palestinian New Zealander and a proud Palestinian. I've been a pro-Palestinian activist for 2 years and currently run the pro-Palestine Saturday rally at the square, and have been doing so for almost 2 years. 2 years is nothing in the context of this brutal war. Activists have been calling out the state of Israel on its genocide and human rights abuses against the Palestinians way before the 7th of October, actually since the inception of Israel. So that's almost 77 years. But here we are just beginning to try to put a policy framework that prevents and penalises offending parties to the highest levels of human crimes in history. Reading the petition brought a tear to my eye because it clearly explains what activists have been saying for decades, which is that condemning and sanctioning parties involved in crimes against humanity such as genocide is not only a moral obligation but a legal one at the highest levels, imposed on states, i.e. governing bodies, i.e. this council, and international bodies, as according to the United Nations Human Rights Treaties that New Zealand is a signatory to. While condemnation is an important part to document these atrocities in history, the Palestinians are being exterminated at an alarming rate, with an extermination plan coming closer and closer to completion. And hence we need to move past the condemnation and quickly into the penalties, i.e. prevention. Hence, if this petition is accepted by the Council, the step which will show our true intentions is our success in designing and implementing a policy framework where international human rights abuses are penalised and sanctioned when existing in any way or any form in Palmerston North. I'm a proud Palmerstonian and I attended the Māori Awards Council meeting last year and was very proud of my councillors who voted vehemently to keep the Māori Awards, which is a moral issue, but also at the crux of it, a legal issue. But our governments in Wellington keep forgetting that the Treaty of Waitangi is a legal contract. Hence, I ask you councillors, I ask Palmerston North to do the right thing again and vote yes today and be on the right side of history. Nō reira, tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou, katoa, ngā mihi. Thank you. Salam.
Thank you, Rami. You've finished with a few seconds to spare. Well done. Appreciate it. All right. We'll just get some towels there just to fix that water. While we're doing that, we just need to receive the public comment. So we have a recommendation there that council receives public comments. I'm happy to move that. Second by the Deputy Mayor. And we will look to vote, please. That has passed, 16 votes for and none against. All right, we now come to number 6 on our order paper, which is the petition around the ceasefire in Gaza. And I'll invite Katrina and Vivian for Time for Action. If you'd like to come up, please. Zama, are you part of this as well? Okay, all right. Sorry, no, we didn't know. And Katrina and Vivian, you've got 10 minutes. You've sent us lots of stuff, so you might want to take that as read and speak to your petition.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Your Worship, for having us here, and to all of the councillors for listening to us. It's a very important time for us. My name is Katrina Mitchell-Kutab, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm here representing the residents of Palmerston North. I also stand as a Palestinian representing our diverse Palestinian community, both Muslim and Christian, whose people continue to suffer grave human rights abuses, the loss of loved ones, and the ongoing violations of dignity, equality, and humanity. I also am here representing my matrilineal line, my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, who were murdered and who were exiled. I bring a simple request that our council exercises good governance in how it spends ratepayers' money and reflects the values of our community. We're asking you to do two things. First of all, to publicly support an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and an end to Israel's illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories, affirmed by the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, and the Geneva Conventions. And second, to develop and adopt an ethical procurement and investment policy that avoids contracts or investments with companies complicit in grave breaches of international law, including those profiting from illegal settlements and occupation. This request is not from one group. It is across Palmerston North. You will see behind me are just a few representatives of your community to whom you represent. Churches of many denominations standing for peace, the Sikh community committed to Sarbat de Bahla, the welfare of all, Muslim Christian leaders united in grief and justice, our youth hoping that this future council won't ignore international law and keep them in mind, elders and families who believe our city must stand for fairness and humanity, and our unions. This is the diverse voice of Palmerston North. Over 16 organisations have signed this petition, and behind them are hundreds and hundreds of others. Right now, Gaza is in official famine. Over 1 million people are starving and children are at risk. The UN warns this is man-made starvation and has been used as a method of war. Hospitals, schools, homes have all been, churches, mosques, and journalists, aid workers have all been attacked, acts that breach international law and constitute war crimes. And yesterday, if you were not aware, I'll just let you know that the International Association of Genocide Scholars, yesterday, the world's leading authority on genocide, passed a resolution confirming that Israel's actions in Gaza now meet the legal definition of genocide under the Genocide Convention. The UN Security Council, the International Court of Justice have already found a plausible case of genocide. And Israel has been ordered to prevent atrocities and allow aid, all orders it has to this date ignored. In the West Bank, illegal settlement expansion is dispossessing families while settlers carry out violence with impunity. The UN Security Council has asked for a ceasefire and a release of the hostages. This is not abstract politics. This is international law, human rights, life and death. New Zealand is bound by international law to ensure that its institutions do not aid or assist Israel's unlawful occupation of Palestinian land. The UN Security Council Resolution 2334 of 2016 declared Israeli settlements a flagrant violation of international law, and in July, the International Court of Justice advised that all states must abstain from trade or investment that breaches or entrenches Israel's illegal presence in the occupied Palestinian territories. And in September 24, in the UN General Assembly, our own Foreign Minister, Winston Peters, made this declaration, to which we, as the Council, are one of its organs. He said, and I quote, "Take steps to ensure nationals, companies and entities under their jurisdiction, as well as their authorities, do not act in any way that would entail recognition or provide aid or assistance in maintaining the situation created by Israel's illegal presence in the occupied Palestinian territories," end quote. Ethical procurement by councils is therefore not only consistent with the United Nations Security Council 2334, the ICJ advisory opinion, the UNGA resolution, but is a necessary step to ensure that ratepayers' money is not used in ways that breach international law. The Local Government Act 2002, Section 10, sets your purpose to promote the social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of our community. Procurement is a core business function of council. How you spend our rates reflects your duty. You already have procurement policies that support environmental and social goals, including promoting local suppliers, reducing emissions, and improving environmental outcomes. Expanding this to include fair trade, sustainable sourcing, and human rights protections is no different. It's lawful, values-based risk management, protecting our city from legal and reputational damage by avoiding suppliers complicit in abuses. The stance of neutral is not neutrality. To stay silent is to side with the powerful and ignore the victims. That is complicity. This council has shown leadership before, raising the Ukrainian flag, fundraising and standing against aggression. That was right. But if we support one community and ignore another facing famine and what the ICJ calls a plausible genocide, we show inconsistency, selectivity, and discrimination. We ask you to treat Palestine with the same dignity you treated Ukraine, nothing more, nothing less. And while gestures like raising a flag or fundraising show respect, Palestine is different. The gravest crime in our modern history is unfolding before our eyes. The ICJ has found a plausible case of genocide. You triggered obligations of all states and their institutions. So this requires more than symbolism. It requires policies to ensure we're not complicit. Ethical procurement is not foreign policy. It is a practical, lawful, and precedent-based policy triggered only by authoritative international findings. I won't go through again what the findings are because I've just been through them. Other councils, Christchurch, Nelson, Environmental Canterbury, have already taken this step. They recognise the cost of inaction and moral reputational harm. And this matters locally to our ratepayers, to our Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, and Jewish communities, and to anyone who values fairness. It reduces tension by showing that human rights apply equally to all. So words are not enough. A ceasefire call without ethical procurement is symbolic but empty. Procurement is where your statement meets action. Palmerston North has always stood for diversity and inclusion, so we're hoping that you show your chance to live those values. To do nothing is to tell part of your community that their pain does not matter. Our vibrant city is known for its multicultural diversity, civic engagement, evident through initiatives like the Manawatu Multicultural Council, your welcoming cities, and our long-standing sister city partnerships. Contradictions are not an option. Diversity and inclusion means not acting differently when it comes to Palestinian and our allies. Under this council, I ask, does Palmerston North live up to its values it proclaims, or are there some communities that will be treated differently in our shared city? Councillors, this is not about foreign policy. This is about your duty. Spend responsibly and ethically, protect our city's reputation, promote community well-being, and uphold international and domestic obligations. So the question's very simple. Will you uphold our values, equality and human rights that your community expects? Palestine requires more than one place. It represents more than one place. It represents all of us. Because when human rights are violated anywhere, humanity as a whole is diminished. International law is meant to protect us all, yet it's been ignored, disrespected, and applied selectively. This is a message from your community. We do not want our rates money funding businesses that profit from Israel's occupation and genocide, making us complicit in these crimes. Many Palmerston North families have suffered unbearable losses, including my own family that was bombed in the St. Porphyrius' church in Gaza and killed, and another of my family members who was not allowed to leave the Holy Family Church and died of an appendicitis before he was shot at. This is a pivotal moment for leadership grounded in fairness, equality, and humanity. Palmerston North can either uphold its values of respect, diversity, and community, or you betray them. Please support both motions, and I now hand over to our Jewish community representative, Vivian.
So thank you, Katrina. That was excellent. We're well over. But Vivian, if you want to wrap up.
I have a very brief few words to add here. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Okay. Kia ora and tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Vivian Porjolt. I am a Jew. My parents escaped the Nazi Holocaust and found safety and protection here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, where I was born and grew up. I've been working for peace and justice in Palestine for over 35 years. The Jewish organization Alternative Jewish Voices is one of the over 16 organizations endorsing our petition. In fact, more and more Jews around the world are rising in solidarity with the Palestinians. It is false to claim that anyone standing up for the rights of the Palestinians is anti-Semitic. Israel is a state, and Zionism is a political movement. Judaism and Jewish identity are based on culture, faith, and history belonging to a people. These are totally different things. We as Jews are affronted if propagandists for a foreign state, Israel, claim to represent Jews. We oppose this foreign interference in Aotearoa. It offends New Zealand values and threatens our social cohesion. Advocacy for a foreign state committing war crimes and atrocities has nothing to do with any kind of human rights. It actually fuels anti-Semitism. So do not be fooled. In fact, the accusation of anti-Semitism in this context has nothing to do with defending Jews. It is a device to suppress the voice and experience and history of Palestinians. We reject the weaponization of our faith and identity to defend war crimes of a rogue state. We are here to support universal human rights, to stand with the Palestinians, and to safeguard our own community against anti-Semitism. So I encourage you all to respond positively to our petition and pass both motions. When we stand on the ground of international law and universal...
Vivian, can we, Hazem, do you want to say anything briefly?
Only maybe two minutes.
Okay, right, if you could please speak.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين والمبعوث رحمة للعالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Kia ora to everybody. I am Hazem Arafi. I am the former president of the Federation of Islamic Associations of New Zealand. I am a former president of the Manawatu Muslim Association, and I'm the president of the New Zealand Arab Association. And I stand here before all of you to support this petition. And what I felt very strongly about talking to you, all of you this morning, is that the world's leading association of genocide scholars has declared that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. A resolution passed by the International Association of Genocide Scholars states that Israel conduct meets the legal definition as laid out in the United Nations Convention on Genocide. A cross-three-page resolution, the International Association of Genocide Scholars presents a litany of actions undertaken by Israel throughout the 22-month-long war that it recognizes a constituting genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Out of 500 scholars, 86% has voted that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. 86%. It's crystal clear. In summary of Israel policies and actions and declarations notes the widespread attack on both the personnel and the facilities needed for survival, including in the healthcare, aid, and education sectors. Among many other elements, it notes that 50,000 killed or injured by Israel, as highlighted by the United Nations aid organization, UNICEF, which impacts the ability of Palestinians in Gaza to survive as a group and regenerate. The IA, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, notes that the statement by Israel leaders dehumanizing Palestinians in Gaza, characterizing them as the enemy alongside promises to flatten Gaza and turn it into hell.
So Hazem, like the others, can we please wrap it up? Thank you.
Well, I will, it pretty much speaks for itself. Honorable Mayor and Honorable Councillors, the State of Israel is committing a genocide day after day after day, and for all of this long time. When are we going to take the right side of history and cease dealing with such an apartheid state? Thank you very much. Salamu alaikum. Tena koto katoa. Salamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions that you may have, legal or otherwise.
I've just got one, and thank you all for your commentary. Have any councils not supported this?
Not that I know of. Invercargill were on the one side and another saying no, they won't, but then they have, after the Environmental Council went to them, yes, they have supported it.
So why hasn't Auckland supported it? I understand Auckland Council didn't support it.
I don't know about Auckland Council. I'm not here about Auckland Council. I'm here about Palmerston North Council.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Any other questions that anyone may have about procurement policy, about our rights as Palestinians?
Thank you. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Vivian.
you.
Thank you, Hazem. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, colleagues. We have the petition in front of us, and we have to recommend that we receive the petition for information. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and I'll ask you to vote. And it has passed 16 votes for and none against. Colleagues, there has been some alternative recommendations put up. There's been two put up. We will put those up first. I sent you one, but I believe Councillor Bowen has sent one as well. So the first one, which I'll speak to, and then Councillor Bowen, I'll get you to speak to the second one, is that Council will support an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, with the Mayor urgently writing to the Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister advocating for such, and that the Mayoral Relief Fund will also donate $2,000 to the Red Cross International towards urgent humanitarian efforts in the Gaza. So, colleagues, and I just want to acknowledge our community here and to Katrina, Vivian and Hazam, who very eloquently portrayed the issues that are happening the Gaza and the Middle East. They are right in the sense that we have advocated for other communities, and the Mayoral Relief Fund is not public money. It is money that is philanthropic. It comes from trusts and philanthropists, and it will be used appropriately in that way. Where we can get some traction, and wearing not only the Mayor's hat but also the National President of Global Cities, is to get in front of the Foreign Affairs Minister immediately, which I understand is we haven't had traction with, and also the Prime Minister, and advocate for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. And I'd ask you to support this. I think this is the very least that we can be doing in this space. So I'll open it up for any comments on one. We might take one. Could we number them, please? 1 and then 2, maybe take them separately. Oh, sorry, 2 and 3. And I'll open it up for comments on number 2 first. Councillor Bowen, are you talking about 2, or are you going to go to 3? Okay, yep. We can take them separately.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that flexibility, because I do very much support the motion that you've put up in support of Council supporting an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and very much thank the community for coming in today to speak to that. And I particularly want to say how I appreciate how you've taken that further into that donation from the Mayoral Relief Fund, which is at your discretion, and I think signals very strongly the support that the community finds in this chamber here today. I have moved that additional recommendation in response to the very specific request from the community to consider our procurement and investment policies, and I think since they've asked us to consider that, it's appropriate to have a motion on the table for elected members to consider, noting that we might need to develop a transition plan in order to be able to do that, but that the community have asked us to consider it, and I think that we should.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wondered if I could ask you a question on your motion. I just want to get an understanding, as our comment has alluded to, and as I'm aware publicly, the Foreign Affairs Minister has already called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. I just want to understand what you're hoping to achieve by writing to them.
Well, it can be symbolic at times, but also, do we know that?
May 2024, it was a press release by the
Yeah, but there is also renewed pressure to do something a bit firmer than just making a press release.
So what will you be asking the...
I'll be asking him to make an immediate and permanent ceasefire, wearing the hat as the Mayor, but also I'll also advocate from Global Cities.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for this motion. And thank you to all of the members of our community who've come in with the petition. I think it's timely, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to be able to state our position. I wholeheartedly support the call for a permanent ceasefire, for the release of hostages, and condemn all acts of violence. And I think I'd be very surprised if there was anyone in this room who didn't agree with me. But I did just want to say some additional things, and that is that the deliberate use of famine as a weapon of war has to be condemned wholeheartedly. And that is a particular, it's a particular hurt, I suppose, that lasts for generations. And I can speak to that as someone with Irish heritage. I think this is a very important issue for local people. We know it's happening in international context, but there are so many people in this community that have been affected by the situation, the intolerable situation in Gaza, people who are friends and family who've been killed or injured. But as well as that, wider members of the community who just find it unbearable to see day after day women, children being killed, hospitals, schools being bombed, people already living in tents being set on fire. The whole thing is appalling. And I welcome the opportunity to give my views, actually. I really do. And I'm quite sure that everyone else here agrees. But I just want to say to our members of our community that it is very important that we all do what we can. We may feel, well, here in Palmerston North, there's not a whole lot we can do. But actually, all voices put together do make a difference. So I encourage my colleagues to please support this motion. I think it is important that we make a stand. Thank you.
Councillor Bellin.
Thank you. I wanted to speak in support of both of the motions on the table. And I think this is a conscience thing, so this comment really isn't aimed to persuade you because I think you already know what you're going to do or not do. But this comment is for my children and for all the young people that are in the chamber today because they're watching this and they're watching me. And my children are looking to me to know how to react and how to navigate this kind of distress and fear and how to live our values at the same time. So to my babies, every day we watch footage from Gaza and we bear witness. I know that you are acutely aware of what's going on and why, and at the ages of 11 and 9, you already know that international law is a made-up concept and that human rights is a made-up concept. And like all made-up concepts, they exist only on paper unless they are enacted and upheld, and they require mass buy-in to exist in the real world. International law exists because the world has already lived through war without restraint and the horror that comes with that. The UN Charter, the Geneva Conventions, the international court rulings are all guardrails that prevent chaos and destruction. And I grew up in a world where those things meant something, and you're growing up in a world where they don't. And if some or other nation can disregard these rules, can breach them when it suits their agenda without consequence, and bring such terror, then international law is exposed as a toothless concept, and human rights as an abstract concept for which the necessary global buy-in has expired. And I'm sorry that you're living in that world. International law is our best hope for a secure world. And I have no hesitation at all in taking any action, symbolic or otherwise, that defends it. And looking past all the rhetoric to the material facts, it is plain that there is no two-state solution on the table. The annexation plans, the withholding of aid, the displacement, the famine, the rendering of the territory completely uninhabitable, the murder of journalists and civilians are not the actions of a regime contemplating a ceasefire or the prioritising of the returning of hostages. My beautiful daughter, you used to ask me often how we get aid into Gaza. You fundraised, you donated, you came up with plans to get past blockades, and somewhere along the line you stopped asking because you realised that we are powerless. And then we're watching at the moment elderly, peaceful protesters being arrested en masse in England, and you realise that we might be voiceless as well, that freedom of speech is just a concept that's fast disappearing. I'm under absolutely no illusions that we here can do anything about this, but there's no reason not to try. There's no reason not to signal that we believe in human rights applying to everyone, and that we support international law in the only way that makes it real and not an abstract concept by upholding it in action as well as word, and doing what little we can to contribute to lasting peace, because the alternative is every country and every man for himself. And we know what that looks like because history is full of it. We can use the strongest signal in the neoliberal order, our dollar, because money talks. Every dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of world that we accept and the kind of behaviour that we condone. My kids are looking at me to see what we do in the face of brutal dismantling of all the assumptions that we've had about peace and security and global cooperation and human rights. And they will remember, and history will remember, what we chose, how we acted, who tread carefully, and who stayed silent.
Councillor Havara.
Thank you. I've just got a question for the Chief Executive for number 3, the impact of number.
We're not on number 3, but,
Before I comment, I just wanted to.
oh, okay, fair enough.
Through Mr Mayor, number 3, don't necessarily see any problems with that. What I would probably suggest is that we would bring the procurement policy back to the earliest meeting we could. Obviously, we have our strategic procurement principles in place as well. It's important to make sure that if that gets approved, that it doesn't become just a one-liner in the procurement policy, that it sits appropriately where you want it to sit. So we would bring that back.
I'm also very happy to support both motions. I do, very similar to Councillor Sabellin, I have to turn the TV off when my grandchildren are watching anything to do with Gaza, because they don't understand at all what's going on. So for me, I would definitely support both motions going forward. And thank you very much for bringing it.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and colleagues, and firstly, thank you to the petitioners, thank you to those in the chamber today, thank you, Katrina, Vivian and Hazam, for your passionate, heartfelt and well-reasoned arguments. What you are doing is grappling locally with what is indeed the most confronting acts of state-sponsored violence that this world has seen in recent years. And we've just heard a couple of my colleagues comment about how confronting that is in a personal sense. I just want to comment briefly in terms of then what is an appropriate response for a multicultural city, a city that has a proud history of welcoming all. And for me, at the heart of multiculturalism is a commitment to peace. It's a commitment to making sure that when we have our differences, we work those out in the absence of violence. And I think it's incumbent on us as a city to ensure that we have a depth in our response and activating a multiculturalism that speaks to not only the ability to enjoy festivals, to enjoy culture, to enjoy cuisine, but to back people when they're facing the harm and challenges that we see in this case. So absolutely in favor of recommendation 2, and that it puts our voice collectively, 90,000 of us, in writing to the Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister. And yes, it is true that there has been some useful comments from the current government in the past, recognizing the issue. The reality is that at a New Zealand level, there's very little, if any, sign of action. And so it is incumbent on us as a city to call for that action. And I think doing that through the Mayor's advocacy to the Prime Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister in the first instance is a very appropriate response. I look forward to further conversations around recommendation 3. Thank you, Mayor.
The Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe te rangatira, o te rā tēnā koutou. Well, this is really, it's not hard. In Māori we have a saying, kare he kōrero tua mai tua atu. There's nothing more that can be said. When the petitioners came, you laid the kaupapa down very clearly. When my colleagues have stood, they too have said everything that I support. And so that notion of saying kore he kōrero tua mai tua atu is very apt in saying, what more could I say other than to say I support 2 and 3? So,
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to support, to speak in favour of 2, but I will not be supporting 3, but I'll probably come back to that later on when that comes through. This is a topic that's very sensitive and has affected a lot of members in our communities, Jewish and Palestinians alike. I've got Jewish friends, I've got Palestinian friends, And I've spent the last 15 years studying on this topic. Even wrote my master's thesis on this topic. I do acknowledge that this is a complex conflict that is rooted in religion, land, and identity. But I believe that we must continue to call for a permanent ceasefire and also call for an end to the aid blockade, as well as the safe return of Israeli hostages, dead or alive. It is my view that it is the responsibility of both Israel and Hamas to agree to terms which enable an immediate ceasefire or cessation of armed conflict, the release of hostages, and also a focus on meeting the immediate humanitarian needs of the Palestinian people. As a council, I believe we must also continue to advocate for a long-term and political solution to the situation so that the Israelis and Palestinians can securely live peacefully side by side. And it is my hope that Mr. Mayor, when you write that letter to the Prime Minister, that we advocate for a solution that has been backed by a number of UN resolutions, UN Resolution 242, Resolution 181, and also in support of the Oslo Accords, which call for a Palestinian state and Israeli state living side by side peacefully. It is clear to me also that the future of Palestinian state living peacefully side by side is the only durable and realistic and fair solution. And I believe that at present, with all the land grabs happening in the West Bank or Gaza, the two-state solution is becoming a lot more difficult to imagine. But I believe that this is a solution that can only be solved at the negotiating table. Everyone in the international community should be working towards that end. I therefore call on all parties to return to the negotiating table and to take meaningful steps towards a two-state solution. Such a solution can only be achieved around the negotiating table. Yes, it's true, we can exert pressure on Israel. We can exert a lot of pressure on Israel to come to the negotiating table through these sort of actions. But I simply believe that we should limit ourselves to option 2 for the time being. Hammersmith is a very multicultural city, as been highlighted in the petition. As I mentioned earlier on, I've also got Jewish friends and Palestinian friends that have been affected by this conflict. There are Jewish people who do not agree with the Israeli government's position. And there are Palestinians who also do not agree with Hamas' choice of political resistance. And therefore, I think we should limit ourselves on calling on all parties to the table and for a ceasefire. I'll leave it at that, but if I get an opportunity to speak on option 3, I'll come back and speak to it as well. Thank you.
All right. I don't think I need a right of reply. Number 2, we will vote on number 2 now, please. And it has passed, 16 votes for and none against. Thank you. All right, Councillor Bowen, do you want to speak to your motion? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this forward. And as I said in indicating that it was coming, this is a result of the petition that's come from our community who asked us specifically to consider this. And so in speaking to it, I don't think I can do any better than to quote what our community have said to us, that this is an ethical, not a political call. As Councillor Zabellin said, in fact, this is a conscience matter. Of course, councils have in the past taken ethical positions on international issues, and as they've explained to us already in this chamber, we've certainly done that in the past. This simply asks us to avoid contracts with companies complicit in grave breaches of international law. So to reverse that, would we really want to be a council
that sought out contracts with companies complicit in grave breaches of international law. I don't think that's who we are, not as this council, and our community has said very clearly that they don't think that's an appropriate use of ratepayer money, and that's our responsibility to hear them, to test that in this room, and to come to a decision. So colleagues, I'm asking for your support to do the right thing today and stand on the right side of history in this matter.
Before I go to the Deputy Mayor, I could just have a question to the CE, and I'm just unsure who may be able to answer this. As we already have ethical procurement policies, what happens with some organisations that get caught up in this? And I'm talking about big multinationals, for instance, Boeing, Hewlett-Packard, those sorts of companies. Where do we go with that? If we agree to this now, do we close those organisations in our city, in our region?
Through your worship, I think that this particular recommendation is talking about council procurement with those companies, or contracts with companies complicit in these breaches. So it isn't the ones that you're potentially talking about aren't ones that we've got contracts directly with in any way that I'm aware of. I'm just checking the team. He's nodding his head in the right direction.
Okay, I say that because we did have a former policy up and it was tested with the New Zealand Defence Force, and it saw the closing of, or the attempted close of Linton Camp, and that's where it was going, and just there's unforeseen consequences. I'm not sure if you can answer that, about consents really.
Yes, through your worship. Again, if this resolution gets up as it is, as already previously mentioned, we would bring it back and then show how it fits into the procurement policy. Perhaps at that point in time as well, we'll look to identify any sort of unforeseen consequences of this going through, but I can't think of any at the top of mind at the moment.
All right. To the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm grateful that you asked that question because no doubt others would want to know that too. Thank you, Councillor Bowen and also Councillor Zabellan for bringing this forward. I think one of the things that it does do is align our community's values with what we do. So it's putting up front, this is what we value. It's aligning the decisions we make with our values. And secondly, I think it makes things very transparent in terms of where we as a council stand with this particular matter. And I think that's important. Transparency is important. And I support this very much. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, and I thank everyone who's come along to petition.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a number of questions, if that's right, to our council officers. I'm sure there must be somebody here from our procurement team. I just want to get an understanding, are we currently procuring from or investing in any companies that are complicit in this situation that we're aware of?
Through Mr Mayor, no, not that.
Are we procuring in or investing in any companies that are involved in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict that we're aware of?
No.
Any companies or organisations that are involved in the Yemen conflict that we're aware of?
No.
South Sudan?
No.
Okay. So if we're not, what in our current policy prevents us currently from investing or procuring in companies or organisations involved in many of the global atrocities going on around the world?
Through you, Mr Mayor, probably the thing that I would point to would be we, in our procurement policy, refer to the Office of Auditor General guidance on procurement principles, which the one that springs to mind for me is the principle on integrity, which is defined as anyone who's managing public resources should do so with the utmost integrity. Standards applying to public servants and other public employees are clear, and the public entities need to make clear when funding other organisations they expect similar standards from them. So that's probably the one that springs to mind at this point.
Thank you. So by adopting this, it wouldn't materially change our procurement or investment policies as they currently stand?
Not that I can foresee.
All right. Well then, Mr. Mayor, I'll just briefly say it's not that I, as Councillor Bowen suggested, support the inverse, it's that I support what we're currently doing, so I won't support item 3.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues rising to speak in support of this. It's interesting hearing the line of questioning that we just had around whether or not, we had any dealings with any of these companies. I'd say to some extent that might be more down to luck than to specificity and policy, and I think it's actually worth articulating clearly in black and white from a policy point of view whether or not we want to see public money from our community used in contracts with companies complicit to grave breaches of international law. I think that is the most simple, no-brainer, full stop no that you can ever imagine. In I'm going to say 17 or 18, Mr. Mayor, we did take up a policy around an investment policy saying that we as a council would not invest in casinos and tobacco, and within that we also said that we would not be investing in cluster munitions or landmines because there was strong international condemnation and evidence around those. I think at that point in history we were not seeing the levels of conflict and the levels of danger that we now see today, and I think in hindsight, if we had seen today, we would have just plugged it in then because it only makes sense. But unfortunately what we have seen, and as documented in this petition and every night on the news, is thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of children's lives lost, of innocent non-combatant civilians caught up and killed, etc., etc. And it only makes sense for us to be very clear in black and white that this community is fully committed to ensuring that our use of public money is not complicit in ensuring that the next bomb drops.
Yep. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I will be supporting this recommendation. And I just wanted to say that ethical investment is a concept that has been around for some time. In terms of where people want to put their money, they want to be sure that they're not inadvertently supporting atrocities. And that happens, I think many of the Kiwi savers have had to be a lot clearer about where they're putting their money. Many people, when they're considering their investments, consider how they can do that ethically. I think it's very hard for people to think that they have to pay their rates to the council, and that council may subsequently be using their rates to support companies that are in breach of international law. Now, I think that ratepayers have got every right to ask us not to do that. The second thing is, I couldn't give a damn about the practicalities of whether we do or we don't have investments in them at the moment and how much it's, whether it hurts us or it doesn't hurt us. That's by the by. In fact, that shouldn't, in my mind, that shouldn't be a factor in whether we do this or not, whether we have got investments, whether it's going to make a difference. The point is that we're taking a stand, an ethical stand, and saying, this is something that we don't think should be happening. If it doesn't hurt us at all, that in a way isn't very commendable, is it? It would be more commendable if it was hurting us. But nevertheless, I think it's an important stand to make. And then just finally, I want to say that I'm not really having much sympathy for those who are trying to split hairs and saying, oh, we're kind of doing this already, so we don't need to support this. Support it because your community has asked you. How often do we get a chamber? How often do we get a chamber full of people with petitions of this nature very, very rarely. It's important to people. We're here to represent people and their views, and I think we should be supporting this.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr Mayor and colleagues. So totally in support of this recommendation number 3 by Councillor Bowen. If we go back to, and our previous presenter indicated in the papers that Christchurch City Council became the first local government in 2024 not to support any businesses that sanctioned the war efforts in Gaza. At the time, the Christchurch City Council, like Palmerston North City Council today, does not spend any money on those companies listed in the United Nations. So it was definitely a gesture of good faith and humanity. Regardless of whether we are spending any money on those companies is irrelevant, because the key to what Christchurch City Council did was made it impossible that any dealings with any of those companies listed could be done with business in the future. So I'm happy to support this recommendation.
Councillor McLeod.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just want to ask a question before the vote starts. If we were to ask for the CE to probably come back with a report through the chair on probably the unforeseen consequences of this recommendation, how long would that take? Is it sort of like a desktop analysis that we can do, or? Because I'm just very mindful of the practicalities around this as well, potentially unforeseen consequences that this might have for us. Let's say if we end up dealing with Linton Camp, for example, Haikia Camp on a particular thing or consultation, and then that sort of affects our dealings in that regard.
Through the chair, you haven't explicitly asked for that, but I think I've mentioned a couple of times now that the intention with this is that we would see how this fits within the framework of the current procurement policy and bring that back into the chamber. I think it's important. Otherwise, this recommendation will just simply sit as a one-liner probably in the procurement policy if it goes as it is, and I don't think that that's your intention around that. If you're wanting us to, we will probably look at, given the fact that there's been a number of questions asked about procurement currently at the moment, we may very well just do a scan across our systems to see where procurement is occurring and ensuring that it's in line with Council's decision around that. That'll probably lead into a conversation when the policy comes back into the chamber around any sort of unforeseen consequences.
I speak in opposition to recommendation 3, and for the very reasons that I highlighted earlier on. While I understand the plight of the Palestinian people, and I share the concerns that have been brought forward to us by the community, I don't feel comfortable with this particular recommendation because of some of these unforeseen consequences that I'm not willing to put my name to at the moment. As I've said, and I continue to say, it is clear to me that a future Palestinian state living side by side with Israel is the only option and realistic and fair solution. And that the best way to achieve this conflict is through negotiation. We may take a stand as a council, which we've already done in option 2, which is to call for a ceasefire and encourage both parties to come to the table. But I'm not prepared to support recommendation 3. But through my actions, I've highlighted that I'm in favor of pushing for a ceasefire, and for the mayor to write a letter to the Prime Minister expressing that concern and the concerns of the community that have been shared with us this morning. But I'm not prepared to put my name on option 3, so I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Colleagues, look, thank you, Councillor Bowen, for putting this forward, and it is what this community here now is asking for. I just want to signal the unforeseen consequences that possibly could happen. there is a list of companies, and some of them are here, and some of them are coming here. So it does put some of our big logistics and some of our other existing sectors at risk. So Volvo, Caterpillar, Microsoft, Amazon, AWS, Web Services, Starlink are all companies that you are signing away. Shipping lines. So I do have some real issues with that. It's the I don't have it. The resolution as it is sounds absolutely ethical and everything that we should be doing. But do we sign away Tūtanganui Logistics Hub? Do we sign away other parts of our logistics and defence sectors? That is what you have to ask yourself. So I haven't got an opinion yet, and I'm going to maybe swayed by people around the room, but I just want you to think about that. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just going to speak very, very briefly. The motion that's been put up there just really gives us an opportunity to review our policy in light of the catastrophic breaches of human rights that are occurring and have unfolded in Gaza. It'll give us a chance to actually examine the fine print of our procurement policy and bring those back to the Chamber to provide some surety for Council in terms of the way we go about our business and who we fund. As I mentioned before, the catastrophic breaches of human rights and war crimes in Gaza cannot be ignored, and we cannot be complicit with that terrible, terrible state that is actually occurring. Thank you.
Councillor. So there's no other councillors wishing to speak. I'll go back to you, Councillor Barn, for a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, colleagues, for your thoughtful consideration of this request from the community. Thank you to officers for trying to help us work through any unintended consequences that might be within that. And I was very encouraged, as I'm sure the community was, to hear from our CFO about the integrity standards that our officers hold themselves to in determining how they give effect to our policies. I think what this is asking us to do is to hold ourselves as elected members to that same standard of integrity and to respond to the community who've asked us to do that. It's mildly ironic, I suppose, that we're talking about the unforeseen consequences of a policy, whereas when you turn the TV on, we're seeing the absolutely foreseen consequences of these breaches of international law in our wider community. And we've spoken today about that being really confronting and wanting to turn the TV off so we don't have to see it. Our community don't have that luxury when that's their family, their whānau, their friends, their community who are facing that day by day in their lived experience. Easy for me to turn the TV off, go do something else. Not so easy for them. And so they've come into this chamber to make a very reasonable request of us as their elected members that we take this seriously and that we reflect on the things that we can do. And I'm as delighted as the rest of you to hear that probably we're already doing all of this. Probably this makes no difference. There may be some situations that we have to consider, and the Mayor is absolutely right to raise those, and the Chief Executive is committed to bringing that back to us to look at. But today, in the face of our community's request, I think we can do this, and I think we should do it.
All right, we will vote, please.
You're not wrong. No, maybe 3. Billy, 3.
And that is passed 13 votes for. 3. 2 against, and 1 abstention. All right, we might, apologise to our Canoe polo people, but we might have a small break. Thank you. So we'll be back in the chamber at 1:45. Thank you. Kia ora. Can we have a bit of order, please? Deputy Mayor, can you please? All right, colleagues, we go to number 7 and number 8 on our order paper, and this is around confirmation of minutes, recommendations to council of the ordinary meeting, council meeting of the 6th of August 2025, part 1 public, and part 2 confidential B confirmed as a true and correct record, and then also the minutes of our extraordinary council meeting on the 13th of August 2025, part 1 public, and part 2 confidential be confirmed as a true and correct record. I'm happy to move those. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Harper for both of them, as the Deputy Mayor was here for one and not the other, so that makes it nice and easy. I'll take for both to get together, unless somebody wants them separated. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, if we just have them separated, I just need to record my abstention for the 6th of August part 1. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so we've got the first one there on meeting on the 6th of August. Are there matters arising? There being none, we will vote, please. That has passed 14 votes for and 1 abstention. All right, we'll move through to the second one, which is around our extraordinary meeting on the 13th of August, and we'll vote for that, please. If there's no matters arising, and there is none, we will vote. And that has passed 14 votes for and 1 abstention. Okay. All right, we're moving on. And this is around the response to the notice of motion Canoe polo feasibility study business case, and we'll just ask for some officer comment. The paper is on page 29 of your council papers, colleagues, and just invite Anne-Marie Maury to the table. Anne-Marie.
Kia ora koutou, Mayor and Councillors. Anne-Marie Maury, Policy Analyst in the Strategic Planning Group. In terms of my report responding to the notice of motion, I'll take that largely as read. I just did want to add some further information that I received from Sport New Zealand in relation to the amounts in the report that would be the cost of preparing a feasibility study and a business case. Their advice was that seemed to be a fair range, given the capital cost to build a new purpose-built canoe polo facility, and just reflecting back on the needs assessment that was provided to the Culture and Sport Committee back in June, that put it at potentially a cost of 3.5 million, taking kind of a middle range cost. So on that basis, Sport New Zealand have advised that it's not unusual to expect between 2 and 7% of the capital cost to be, to fund the assessments that are required to inform decisions about whether or not the facility is in fact feasible and has a robust business case. So that puts the amount provided in the report like pretty bang on, so looking at a minimum of $70,000. For this type of facility, there could be some additional costs in relation to engineering, given that it's dealing with water, and potentially other costs relating to quantity surveying and consenting. Just a quick comment about combining stages as proposed in the notice of motion. I suppose more traditionally, we, at the conclusion of one stage of work, there's kind of like a hold in terms of, you know, proceed or not proceed. It is more cost efficient, as evidenced in my report, to carry out stages together, but that's on the basis that you're receiving, you know, a positive feasibility study and can continue on looking at the business case aspects. Just note that the reasons for higher costs if the work is done separately, that is probably mainly around having to re-procure the work. You might engage a different team, and it's actually very difficult to put an absolute figure on this type of work because they're all different. They vary in complexity and scope. So you might get a different consultant team working on it, and there might be different things that they look at as part of that work. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Look, in terms of, and just noting our Canoe polo people here, who are quite well connected in the city and the wider region, they could actually carry out things a lot cheaper than what you're, you know, the round figures you're talking about, if they were to partner with somebody, if they were to do a lot of the work themselves. You know, there might be, dare I say, digger drivers, all sorts of people, you know, business people that might procure some material for them, rather than the, you know, the gold-plated version of what you spoke about. Is that an opportunity for them as well?
It certainly is an opportunity to get that in-kind support that would reduce the capital cost of a facility, yes. Yeah.
Okay. A few questions. Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Just in your report under 3.3, you've indicated that Manawatu Canoe Polo have indicated that they can potentially access funding or use some of their own funds for the future stages of work identified. So, and given that in the public comment this morning where they said they've got money in the kitty, do you have any, I didn't have the chance to ask the question to them directly, but do you have any understanding of whether they're able to proceed without the funding that's in this notice of motion?
Thanks, Councillor Naylor. I just had an opportunity to quickly catch up with Amy in the break. They have members from the club looking at funding opportunities. They do have some funds available as, you know, part of the funds that they hold as a club. But yes, they, well, I think just need to be wary about the amounts. I'm probably not feeling confident of saying what they do have available to put forward into doing this work. Conscious that, you know, that clubs are run on a voluntary basis. They need to be careful about their financial sustainability. So I think in this instance, they would need to be supported potentially from a number of sources if they were to use some of their own funding.
Okay, thank you. The next question is in the next bullet point down, 4.1, and you've talked about the issue with combining the business case and the feasibility study, and you've talked about if a feasibility study does not conclude that the facility proposal is feasible, then there would be no point continuing. Do you have examples where the feasibility studies have been done and the outcome of that has been that it's not feasible to progress to the next stage?
I don't. From the projects that I've been involved in, most have been, I suppose, proven to be feasible. Sometimes at that opportunity there is, you know, scope to relook at the nature of the project. Sometimes the business case work is partly done through feasibility. Sometimes it's actually done as part of any kind of agreements between partners that may be kind of looking to contribute to the, the collaboration around building a facility. So it's all very different, but in my experience, most of these proponent-led things have progressed through the stages, and most have been found to be feasible. I think the tricky thing is around the financial aspects.
Okay, and just the final question is, this appears to be outside of our normal process. Would there be a risk that other sports codes, if the notice of motion was approved today, that we could expect others would expect us to be doing the same outside of the normal process for their particular sports code?
Potentially, sometimes these facility proposals aren't aligning with our own processes. So, there may be other examples where proponent-led projects, the proponents, the clubs or organisations come to council seeking support, and it may be to do, this type of assessment work, or it may be for actual assistance around the capital, the actual building aspects.
Okay. Thank you. That's all from me, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Emery. In 3.2, you say officers had proposed establishing a fund to assist with this type of work, but has not been supported in the long-term programme budgeting phase at this stage. So, can you just remind me what was the nature or the amount of the fund that was proposed, and was that in the draft long-term plan and then cut at a later stage, or did it not make it to the draft?
My understanding is that it was around $50,000. It didn't make its way into the draft LTP, but it was a budget put forward by staff and was, I suppose, filtered out through the prioritisation exercise.
So that was elected members filtered it out?
I wasn't around at the time. I'm looking to Wade. I'm not sure whether he was either, but I think it was probably a staff, just in terms of calibration of budget exercise.
Okay, just because I couldn't remember making a decision on it, so I wanted to just double check that. But that doesn't mean we didn't. I just couldn't remember it. Okay, thank you. So was that 50,000 for a feasibility study?
It was more to enable, I suppose, the situation we're in now, that we have a proponent group looking to progress those stages in Heiraki Toa, and it would be available to groups to, I suppose, ask council whether they could access some of that operational grant to assist with that type of work.
Okay, but just to be really clear, there's nothing in the budget at the moment for this?
Nothing in the budget for this particular project, but in the past council has provided support to other proponent-led projects like the artificial football turf, the collaboration with Central Football, and also the bowling club, Covered Green thing. So council has supported other clubs and organisations with this type of work.
Okay. Just making a note of that, thank you. And then what's the kind of timeliness or urgency of this funding this request coming to us now, when we've just been through an annual budget process?
Good question, councillor. I'd say it's always tricky in terms of foreseeing the budgets that are required in terms of the ability for the group to, to be motivated enough to advance the project. We've heard today that there are some constraints around the use of the current facility at Hokowhitu Lagoon. So yeah, while there's no, I don't think, immediate urgency, there definitely needs to be some timeliness around looking for that long-term solution.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Can we just go back to the combining of the feasibility study and the business case? And the paper actually just talks about risks, and you've I think partly answered the question. But in the feasibility study, would that actually be looking at sort of engineering challenges, operating costs, and perhaps water quality management, those kind of things? Would that constitute some of the risks that might mean that the feasibility study does not then progress to a business case?
Yeah, potentially those would be some of the things that the feasibility study would look at.
So because of those complexities, is it wise to actually combine the two?
I'm not sure well, I think I would suggest that they're not combined, just but for that reason, I suppose, in terms of there are a lot of matters to consider as part of that feasibility study, including the, I suppose, sustainability of that facility in terms of how it will operate. So yeah, in my view, at this stage, I think it would be better to proceed along the lines of concluding the feasibility before going into business case stage.
Great, thank you. And I suppose just my last question is just really around, there is a process which I think we've probably settled upon, which is hira kitua. And so what other sports are actually in the process of, actually wanting more facilities who might be disadvantaged by this particular motion which is on the table?
The other main project or proposal that we have, we're considering and staff are working with the group is Manawatu Gym Sports. They funded their own feasibility study. They were in a financial position to be able to do that, and they are taking the recommendations from that feasibility study and are looking at how they wish to proceed. But yeah, again, it's really dependent on the financial ability of those groups that are wishing to construct facility, whether they can carry on or whether they can access external funding to perhaps, look further into those, quite fine detailed business case elements that are required.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Anne-Marie. Have you got any other examples of any other projects that have been combined with a feasibility and business case together in council?
I can't think of any. I would hazard to say, I think the work that was done on artificial football turf, the feasibility study, traversed into some elements of the business case. So this is the thing, sometimes there's not a clear-cut line. It kind of depends on the project and the things that are that need to be investigated further that determine the scope of those. So yeah, there is some crossover sometimes into those more sort of financial aspects, and that would be an example, I think, where the feasibility study did traverse into what I would consider to be business case elements.
Thank you.
Just if I could add to that, there are two that I know of, Manawatu, both self-funded, Manawatu Rugby Performance Centre in Watergrove Street. It was self-funded, and that had to get some external funding, so they had to produce something. And one that I was involved with, Squash Gym, definitely did that, and again was self-funded. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I get a comparison? We mentioned a number of codes like funded their own gym sports. Can I understand, can you recall how much we gave to bowls for their needs analysis or their feasibility?
I would be probably putting a finger in the air and guessing, but probably in the region of 20 to 30,000. Bowls did fund a portion of the initial work, my recollection is, but then council funded the feasibility stage.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
With swimming, have we progressed their feasibility, and did the city contribute? Could you remind us?
There was a program for this, for year 2 of the LTP to do a feasibility study for a 50-metre swimming pool. That was deferred in the draft annual budget round, so that's my understanding.
Okay. Central Football, with their request for an artificial turf, did we contribute in any way to the feasibility around that project?
Yes, we did.
Can you recall how much we contributed?
There was a series of investigation reports done for that particular project. Again, I probably would have to go back and check records. I think I have noted it somewhere, but it would be, potentially 50 to 70,000.
Okay. The alignment with aquatics, with the swimming, with the sport, and take note that in the public comment today that there was reference of losing one of the tournaments to Hawke's Bay, which I'm aware they've got a multi-state-of-the-art facility investment, which was part of their shovel-ready contribution from government. Can I understand that with the project here, is it seen, when you did your initial scoping, that the Canoe Polo Club could align with the swimming proposal as far as aquatic sports?
My understanding, the main synergy is in relation to training requirements, potentially through the winter season, to have that, the indoor pool facility available. The issue being with our current pools are that they don't really meet the dimensions required for canoe polo courts, so there are some constraints around using our current indoor pools for anything other than training. Is that right? Yeah.
And add on to that, we also run all our school leagues are all run through the winter season at indoor pools. And that's also time constraints, another issue on that side.
Okay. Can I ask...
Sorry, we'll just do it all through Anne-Marie, please, here. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, can I have a question at this point to the author of the notice of motion, or which is aligned to the officer's report?
That's in the next, this is all about the officer's commentary to it.
Okay, I think that covers me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Anne-Marie. I just wanted to ask, you indicated in your answer to Councillor Naylor's questions that it would be abnormal for us to, help fund a feasibility, and we might attract other groups wanting to do so, but to me it seems from your answer it would be abnormal not to help fund a feasibility, given we've done that for bowls and for artificial turf. So can you just talk me through what you meant there?
Oh gosh, I put me on the spot there, Councillor Wood.
I could frame it another way if that would help. Would it be abnormal to help fund a feasibility study for a sports group?
No, it would not be abnormal.
On the question of the risk of combination, Council has many projects that run over, feasibility, needs assessment, a whole lot of stages, and we regularly get workshops and reports and briefings and all sorts of things as those projects progress. Is there any reason we couldn't get a report back to Council once the feasibility part of this report is done?
Do you mean for this particular project?
Yes, for this project. Could we have an interim report once that first piece of work's done, before it gets into the business case part?
Certainly, that's our normal approach that we have taken, where Council has funded or contributed to the funding towards needs assessments or feasibility studies. Have always brought them back to committee.
And so the risk of progressing a business case on something that was deemed unfeasible through the first part of this report is next to zero, is it? That we'd get a report back after that feasibility part, wouldn't we?
Yes, you would, yeah.
And so in terms of a business case, if it said it wasn't feasible, the business case would be 2 sentences just saying, well, the project's not feasible, so there is no business case. Is that right? Or something along those lines?
Something along those lines, yes.
Great. So in terms of the risks you've outlined from 4.1 to 4.2, I appreciate we have to be cautious with ratepayer funds, but we're not just saying go away and progress it all and don't come back to us until the work's done, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Emery. Thanks very much for your report, and thanks to my learned colleagues. They've changed my questioning a little bit. If I go back to Councillor Dennison's reports of the bowls, the swimming, and the central football feasibility studies that council contributed to, did they all progress to business case, and were they all successful?
Okay, so taking bowls first, yes, that did progress to business case and was presented to council. Central football, I think is in a response to Councillor Johnson's question, I think some of the business case aspects were addressed as part of the feasibility study that was funded from council.
Thanks. 2 more questions, Anne-Marie. In the papers, 3.3 talks that the Canoe Polo needs assessment has already been completed, to be followed up with obviously the detailed site assessment, then the feasibility study, then progress to business case. Do we understand what costs are involved at the business case stage?
I haven't separated out the costs in my report, just checking that. Again, I sort of come back to the advice from Sport New Zealand in terms of like a rough indication of a total cost for both those stages. So it would be difficult to, I suppose, give you a definitive figure about the cost for each. I can do that. I can come back to council if that was of value.
No, that's okay. Probably needs to do it. But where I was going with that question, Anne-Marie, the next question would be then, if the council agreed to contribute to Canoe Polo's assessment or site, or whichever one it is, would that contribution be contingent upon the completion of a successful business case at the end? What I'm saying is that if we agreed $10,000 to the feasibility assessment, but nobody had any money to complete the business case, that creates another risk for council. Would we know what the costs are across the entire proposal to the end of the business case?
I think that's very difficult to gauge at this point. We are looking at kind of the scale of work to be done. I mean, my experience has been that from those previous projects that have been mentioned, that we are looking, when it's interesting to add it all up, I suppose, but we have, I suppose, done and funded as a council work in stages. So, yeah, from memory, I can't recall how much it would be to, I'm perhaps looking to colleagues, whether Aaron can help answer the question about what the business case costs for the bowling project. Okay.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Just the Hawke's Bay example, that's an integrated facility that has pools and canoe polo and et cetera within one facility, is that right?
It's part of the Hastings sport complex, which has the big 50-metre swimming pool and the outdoor purpose-built canoe polo facility in that, the massive venue that it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess setting up this kind of approach here where we look at just one piece of potentially a wider puzzle, like does that potentially get us heading down a track where we end up with kind of multiple disparate facilities cases rather than an integrated response to what we've heard across the aquatics and canoe polo community?
Potentially, I mean, this would be the benefit of progressing this work in terms of the recommendation made in the needs assessment was to look at sites, some of those sites would be separate to facilities. Some may be within other park complexes. It kind of could be either. We could, as the work progresses, look at an option that would be not integrated, or we could look at options that fitted within a wider complex.
Thanks, but at this stage, it's not a joint request. So we've got a stream of interest from the aquatics community around a pool, and then we have a separate stream of interest for swimming, and then a separate stream of interest from the canoe polo community around a pool or a space.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there isn't yet a joint kind of ask from the community around broadly aquatics and space.
There has been a joint ask through, from memory, the 21 LTP, when there was like a considerable amount of submissions made connecting the two facilities together, but there were also some separate submissions or desires around a pool and a purpose-built canoe polo facility. So there was a bit of both, from memory.
No, thanks for that reminder. That is helpful. So would it be more expensive to build one or two?
One or two facilities?
Yeah.
More expensive to build two.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor.
Just on that, Anne-Marie, is there a facility that does, in New Zealand, that does have both?
The Hastings Sports Park.
Yeah, but they're quite separate. One's indoor and one's outdoor.
So when you say both, do you mean canoe polo?
Yeah, canoe
indoors?
polo, right in the middle of it, right in the middle of the 8-lane indoor facility.
I'm not sure. I think they, again, I would probably have to...
They're co-located, but they're not right together.
I suppose it depends on the dimensions of the pool available, and certainly a 50-metre Olympic-sized swimming pool is probably better able to...
I know the answer, sorry, I'm teasing you. Sorry. Councillor Finlay.
Yep, I'm just going to carry on a little bit in the same subject. But in Hastings, the facilities there, is it a dedicated canoe polo area?
Yes, it is.
It is. So it's a separate pool, it's not a swimming pool or anything else. No one else uses it.
It's an outdoor facility. It's 4 outdoor courts. I don't know whether you've been to the park, but it is. Yeah, it's not part of the big swimming pool complex.
So the canoe polo area with the 4 courts, no one else uses it other than canoe polo?
My understanding that's its primary function. There may be some other use of it. I've got a memory of potentially triathlon using the water body for those sports, but I'd have to go back and look to see what other use it has, but it's predominantly for canoe polo.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for letting me come back into the queue. Just one question there, Anne-Marie, just for clarity. The canoe polo and the swimming complex at Hawke's Bay, that was actually built together, so it was actually basically one project?
No.
I don't think so. I think that the pool was built with shovel-ready money. I'm not sure that that whole complex is run by a trust. So I think they were done as separate projects.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anne-Marie. It was a little painful, but anyway, we got there. Thank you. Appreciate you putting that together. Colleagues, we've got the recommendation there around just receiving the memo titled Response to the Notice of Motion, Next Stage to Support Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club to Carry Out Feasibility Business. I'm happy to move it. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'm not going to say too much other than you know, a lot of questions were asked, and I think a feasibility study would tease out the answers to for us around separate facilities, joint facility, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, we'll leave it to the next paper that's coming up. So if you could vote, please. That has passed 16 votes for and none against. That's the entree, folks, the main's to come. Just in case you got a little confused there, it's not quite there yet. All right, we've got the notice of motion for Kiwi Canoe Polo next stage support, and it's around from Councillor Harper. Have we got? We should have that on there. And the seconder, yep, thank you. So the council grant 10,000 to Kiwi Canoe Polo for the purpose of developing a combined feasibility study and business case for the new canoe polo facility to inform the 2737 LTP. Councillor Harper.
Thank you. I'd like to move this motion, as I have, this notice of motion. The purpose of this notice of motion is so that we can have so that we can do a combined feasibility and business case for the canoe polo facility to inform the long-term plan for 2737. And the reason is that on the 25th of June meeting, the assessment outlined the need for the facility, but not the next step, which was to support the club's vision. The motion seeks to support the club with a financial grant of 10,000 for developing the business case and feasibility together, so that we get the most efficient and effective way to inform us in the next long-term plan. And the club has, as they informed us in the public comment, does have the monies to help us fund some of that feasibility study. So with that, I would like your support to put this notice of motion forward so that we can move forward to the next stage. So that's why I have put this up, and I'd hope that you will support this going forward. Thank you.
I'll go to Councillor Wood next as the... Sorry? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I'll just quickly, I'll just say a couple of things. Look, colleagues, I do think this is pretty simple. I appreciate that some of the questions being asked will come out in some sort of feasibility study. For those, I mean, a few of us have been a bit closer to the sport, so we can understand the dynamics of it. And if you go up to Hastings, it's a co-located facility, right? They are separate pools. And it's been philanthropic money and rolling up the sleeves of the Hawke's Bay canoe polo people, and Sir Graham Avery and a few others have tipped the money in to build that facility. I understand there was not a lot of council money other than the land. I think it is pretty simple. The feasibility takes them to the next step. I can sense a bit of frustration from the canoe polo that they want to get on and do things. They're practical people. They're successful on the water and they're successful off the water, and they'd want to get in there, and I think they'd really roll their sleeves up and get things done. And in some ways we just need to get out of the way and let this thing happen. It's about helping clubs or sports help themselves. I know it isn't following our policy 100%, and I'm sure that's going to come out in some of the comments, but it isn't too far off in the sense that you've got to do something to get greater funding. So you've got to put something that stacks up, i.e. the needs assessment already stacks up, feasibility study, and then it's really obvious if it's not going to fly, they'll stop. And then but if it is, they progress to the next stage around a business case. Pulling those together makes real sense because you're going to use the same consultants, you're going to use a lot of the same information, and you're going to power on ahead. I do think, you know, this is 10K that we're talking about. So 1/6 or 1/7 of what the organisation's looking at spending on this. And I just come back to an old saying that, you know, culture or success, and this organisation's got it in spades, beats strategy and policy every time. So please just think about that. They're stuck at the moment. They're a really successful sport, winning gold medals on the world stage, and they've got a lagoon facility which is world class in a tournament sense, but it's no good for training at early in the morning or late at night when people are trying to have barbecues or go to sleep or get up early, whatever. They need a permanent base, so that's really obvious. This is our next World Championships opportunity. You know, in all honesty, they are very successful for not only our nation, but our city. And others that have rolled their sleeves up and done that are following the same path that these guys are following the same path that they have. Softball, rugby, squash, they all did it. With a little bit of council help, and I mean a little bit of civic support. If we don't provide support, the bigger funders just walk away. So I think we should be supporting this. I know it isn't following due process 100%. It's not far off, so we're not being totally rogue on this. And the officers have given us a good summation of that. And also sportmen or two I know in the background will be there to help as well. So I hope you can support it, and I wish Canoe Polo every success. Councillor Bowen. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Canoe Polo, for sticking around through what's been a long morning already. I think you outlined the opportunity in front of us really well there, Mr. Mayor, and I don't have very many process concerns, and I think they were quite well explored during questions. I think there is a risk about combining. My concerns here are about getting the funding in the right place to deliver the best outcomes across codes for our community. And so I'm going to seek to move an amendment to the resolution in front of us that this proposal to grant $10,000 is referred to the annual budget next year. And my reason for doing that is, first, I think $10,000 is probably not enough. That came out really clearly in questioning, that the cost of a feasibility and business case study can run upwards of $70,000, and we don't have confirmation from Kiwi Canoe Polo that they have that money, and so it might be appropriate that council's share is more. It's also appropriate that if we're going to go ahead with this, and the officer's advice was that generally feasibility study flows into business case, and I know there's some frustration about the process of Hirakitua, but that is the process that we're committed to, that actually that Sport New Zealand best practice advice, in order to enable the institution, in this case Kiwi Canoe Polo, and also council, to successfully access external funding for the $3.5 million that we're looking at spending together on this project. Sport New Zealand's advice is that we stand a better chance of external funding if we've ticked the right boxes in doing those reports. So happy to look at that connection of the two. I think that makes perfect sense with the appropriate stop-go break in the middle, just in case, as was explored in questions. I think that's really sensible. But $10,000 isn't enough to get it there. And even this grant now, even if we agreed to it now, the officer's report says we wouldn't be granting it now. We'd be waiting for them to get all the funding secured. And then Sport Manawatu would then hand over the money. So even if we resolve to grant it now, they don't get the $10,000 now. They get it when they've got the funding for the whole thing, which we don't know that they can do. So there are a couple of reasons there where I'm going, let's refer this to the annual budget. Let's take a bigger picture approach to the different codes that have been mentioned. Let's look to make sure we're consistent in our decision making and how we support the range of codes across sporting, but also particularly in aquatics in this scenario. And let's make sure we're setting Kiwi Canoe Polo up for success by a grant that actually meets their needs, rather than a token towards that of 1/6 or 7th has been described. So testing the room to see, I think there's general support in the room for the grant and for Kiwi Canoe Polo, who are exceptional in what they do. but just testing to see if we can manipulate the timing a little in order to get better outcomes and get the right money in the right place to get the outcomes that we want for the code and for sports in general. Thank you.
All right, we've got an amendment there, so we'll open it up to the amendment. Everyone wants to speak to the amendment? Okay. Councillor Finlay. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I'll just have a look at the amendment. I just think, made a few notes here about the amount of sporting groups that we've supported over the past few years. We've supported hockey and we've supported football, softball, rugby, basketball, athletics, bowls, and on and on and on. We put a lot of support into the rugby at Massey. That was going to be the home of the All Blacks. Yeah, right. That costs a fair amount of money. We put a lot of hope and support into cycling coming here to Palmerston North. No, it didn't. But here we have a sport that's centred in Palmerston North. The national body is here in Palmerston North. Over the years, they have come to us and shown us their rewards, the gold medals, the world championships, etc., etc. They haven't come here asking us for much in the past. They've usually come here and said, thank you for letting us use the facilities that you've given us. They've shown us around the world to be an organiser, a city that's quite famous in canoe polo. We should do a little bit for them. And to me, $10,000 compared to what was spent on some other sports is minimal. Especially when I see the return we've had from canoe polo over the years. How many other sports have brought constant gold medals back to the city? Not many. I think we should support canoe polo as much as we can because I think it's one of the most successful sports we have in the city. Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Firstly, a big congratulations to the recent success of canoe polo. Council's vision of small city benefits, big city ambition. I think one of the challenges of this is that we have a small city budget and big city expectations, especially when it comes to sport. And for that reason, I mean, the size of our city simply is not big enough to fund all the facilities that all sports codes desire. And it's for that reason that I do support the Heira Ki Tua plan that does provide the best possible framework for fairness across the sports codes for them to get the best possible outcomes. So it's for that reason that I do support this amendment. Anne-Marie has highlighted the risks of us operating outside of that framework, and I agree with Councillor Bowen that actually working within that framework actually gives the sports codes the best chance of success because then they have a better chance for that external funding. And relying on our ratepayers to fund is just not going to be a sustainable way for our sports codes to get the facilities that they desire. So for those reasons, I absolutely support this. I know the good process is not favoured by some around this room, but in this case, I do believe good process is the fairest and best way for success for canoe polo and other sports codes. It's where we can look at all of the requests from sport codes, give them all a fair hearing in terms of what we can progress in an affordable way for our community.
I'm biting my tongue. Councillors, culture and success beats strategy and policy and box ticking every single time. These people wouldn't win a gold medal if they went around sticking boxes. So we're talking about $10,000. Are we setting them up for success by delaying it for $10,000? I don't think they're coming to us asking for huge amounts of money. And I, one that will be supporting the substantive and won't support the amendment. World Championship bids, I understand, will be due soon, and the council will probably be looked at about what is the council doing in this space. They deferred a feasibility study, or possibly that could be deemed as that's going to happen. They will attract other funding. I understand that they've got probably 90% of the funding already, or thereabouts, 80 to 90%, because there was a question mark about they weren't sure the money was there. So my understanding there's at least 40,000 of their own funding to be put into this, maybe more. Look, these people roll their sleeves up. You know, I've been in this case myself, and I was frustrated when I came into this chamber 20 years ago, and I had councillors telling me that you didn't know what you're doing and you couldn't do it. That made me more determined to build and do it. And it's made the likes of softball and rugby the same to do it. So, councillors, please get out of the way of process and let these people do their job and what they're really good at. And I think you'll find that they will produce us a fantastic facility if they're just allowed to. So don't support the amendment and support the substantive. Councillor Spellin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that I am in full support of the approach of tackling the steps of feasibility and business case together. I think that's some really good and agile thinking, to be honest, because I've been pretty critical about the unwieldy process that Hiraki Toa offers us and how we can unwittingly commit ourselves to the delivery of facility by virtue of just years and thousands of dollars that have been sunk into layer and layer and layer of report and assessment before any ground is ever broken. And I also note that the needs assessment did identify a long list of 22 potential sites that was refined to 6 potential sites. So in this case, I think it does make sense to combine the process because it's well supported with data already. So I think it's a really good and reasonable proposal, but I do agree that it should be referred to the annual budget process to be considered with all of the other unbudgeted expenditure and be assessed against all the other opportunities to support good, worthy projects. And that's our process for making decisions of this nature. And if we were closer to an annual budget process than we are now, I think that's exactly what would happen. I am a bit sad to see our governance integrity being called box ticking. That is trumped by other stuff. Why even have a strategy? But the 25th of June report did talk about next steps. It explicitly said at paragraph 6.2 that there is no more money in the budget to progress further investigations, but that the club may seek to self-fund or access funding. And that report also said if we wanted to diverge from Hiraki Toa to expedite this, then we could do that in an annual budget process or a long-term plan process. So those were the next steps that were set out in that report. I just repeat that I don't think that Hiraki Toa is particularly efficient, but we did endorse it. And in doing so, we set the process and we set the rules of engagement for all of the groups who are seeking our support for facilities for their code. And I just repeat my position that we do need to be better at upholding the policies that we adopt. No, you don't. Why have the policies if we play fast and loose with them when it suits us or when there's a good, worthy proposal? This is why we have these structures in place. There is still time for the club to go and secure their external funding in the meantime. That only strengthens their position to access more funding, as Councillor Bowen made in her point. I just want to say I am absolutely in favour of this project progressing, and if I'm still around the table at annual budget time, I'd put this up myself. But that's where it should be, and if we were closer to an annual budget process than we are now, that's where it would go, which shows us that the process is right.
Councillor Dennison.
Mr. Mayor, are you still allowing questions on this report that you said that I could ask?
Yes. I sort of set myself up, didn't I?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I just wanted to confirm if we could, because through the officer's response to did the club have money, I didn't get the confidence from the response that they had spare funds apart from sustainability of their sport, but you mentioned they had something like 40,000. Since they're in the room, could we just confirm what sort of quantum they have aside for,
so
if any? Like
Greg or Amy, can you tell us, come up to the...
I'm happy to restate it. I just wanted to confirm, the officers gave the response when we asked, did you have any available funds to put towards the feasibility and business case? And the mayor's, I got the impression that you just had funds to sustain your sport and that you'd need to apply for funding, but the mayor's used a figure 40,000 as an investment towards it you might have in your account. Can I just understand, since you are in the room, what sort of quantum do you have, if any, that you could put immediately towards this?
So Greg is our treasurer. I will really quickly just answer some of that. So we have about a little bit over 70,000 in our
55 total, cash.
so across our cash that we have access to, including term deposits. There is funding with an NZCPA that we are possibly aware of. There might be $10,000 in that. Greg and I are so passionate about this. He's just like, excuse my language, but he's like, fuck, I'm going to put in 10 grand. And I'm sitting here, I'm saying, I'm going to put in 10 grand. Of my own money. I've got 5 kids play this, and the benefit that my kids in our community is that is why I'm turning up every day. So
Sorry, we just need to know.
$70,000 in our bank account, we could probably contribute 40,000 today. Okay. If council was to put in 10, and we've got some funders that we can go to now.
Okay, that's all we need. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is, thank you.
Much.
And then can I ask the other point around combining these the feasibility and the business case? Is that, we're dictating that in our recommendation, but is that not ultimately a decision for the sport? Like, can I maybe get that through you to the officer? That ultimately, is it the sports co's decision to combine the two studies? I don't realise. I think you just switched you off.
You've just switched it off.
Off.
Yep. No.
Thank you. So the question is it up to the code to decide what happens next? Is that kind of...
Yeah, just so I'm clear, that we're putting in our recommendations that we're proposing that they combine the feasibility study and the business case. But I was posing the question, is it actually the sports code decision to combine the two, rather than have us dictate that here?
It's a bit of a collaboration, to be fair. The way that we went about the commissioning of the needs assessment work was done as a collaboration between the club, the council, Sport New Zealand and Sport Manawatu. So that's in terms of putting together the scope of the work, what's required to enable a consultant to be engaged to do that work. In terms of how we went about that, yes, there's definite scope to do that, and we could set up the procurement in a way that the feasibility was done first, and then a hold point, and only carries on provided that is, favourable to proceed into the business case phase. So I think my report sort of alluded to that potential of the way you structure the procurement of the work can facilitate what you're suggesting.
Thank you, that's helpful. I'd like to speak to it. The first points that I'd like to make is that I'm happy to grant a sport outside of the annual plan processes. I think the annual plan process is a central part of decision making against every other code, but I have some comfort still having things that come of moderate requests. And I think this is really a moderate request when you think 10,000 to progress some studies for a particular sport that have been known to us, their desires and their needs around future-proofing their sport. Then I come down to the quantum that the 10,000 seems almost a little light for some of the other sports that we've supported recently, and so I kind of questioned a big loop around that. Where did the 10,000 figure come? Was that just because you thought, my first thought is that just got enough political weight, understanding that all our other financial restraints are in place, that it might get enough appetite for a majority. I'd probably indicate now, in fairness against all the other codes, that I'd be open to an increased amount. In fairness, when you consider it was 20 to 30 for bowls and 50 odd being recalled for as a contribution to the central football, for example. So I just don't want to leave a sport short, and so I wanted to highlight that point. Again, I think it comes down to an agreement with both codes, not for us to put into a recommendation that we should be forcing the fact of a feasibility study and business case. I think there is a risk around combining the two, and I don't want to necessarily be associated with that risk. But if it's outlined, like the officers has suggested in the report and again at the table, that we kind of put a comma around business case, but still use the same company to provide the business case support report, that we do still look at a two-part, and basic prudence would be my point to add into that. I think that would be a healthier way to shape this. Here's the risk. You know, we risk waiting to go into the annual plan process, which is 10 months away. And I feel that we'd be better informed if we were able to get this piece of work done so we can actually make more informed decisions, at the annual plan time when it come about, if this work was able to progress at that sort of rate of time. And so I'm comfortable that I'd rather not sit here and wait 10 months just to have a 10,000 decision made at that point against every other code, because I think that'll be well supported actually if it was lined up with every other program we get to consider. And so I don't want to disadvantage a code that didn't realise the opportunity that they had during the annual plan process time for submissions and all the other like, and having to wait that time. So that kind of sums up now saying I'm supportive of the recommendation as a whole, raising the concern that, I think it's probably a little light, but I'm still happy with 10 in the light of the financial restraints the council has, and that combining the two, I mentioned, for my view, the prudence of taking that further, but if the code is ultimately happy with that, that's their contribution, because they're the lead body actually progressing it, and ultimately I have heard a level of comfort that the sport can find the balance of the money needed to do these reports, and so hence I'll be supportive. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, sir. Thank goodness it has only come to us with $10,000. What a drama. I certainly support this. I stand as a member of the Culture and Sport Committee, and this is going to be great for the city if it happens, and well overdue. I don't know a lot about the sport per se, but I've certainly been down to Lagoon when there's been things happening, and I've seen the thousands and thousands of people pumping hundreds of thousands into our economy. So, I certainly support this and look forward to attending the opening ceremony. Thank you.
Councillor Meehan online. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's quite simple. The future is now. If we play this out, as we know in a lot of sports, people that are enthused and want to do the work are there now and want to do it. If we ride it out, they lose their heart and they disappear. We need to work with this now. Combining the studies is perfect. It cuts that red tape, and isn't that great? Because we drag these processes out that cost more and more. We need to simply deal with it now and get it done. It's not a big amount. We've heard them say they put 10,000 their own money in. So us putting in 10,000 ain't an arm and a leg, and I think we should move forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak to the amendment specifically and reserve my right to come back in whether this passes or fails the substantive. The mover put two arguments to you, councillors, as to why we should move an amendment. One of them was the council had concern of whether or not the club had enough money to fund this and would rather that we took more time to consider in the annual budget whether or not we needed to have a higher quantum of funds. Thank you to Councillor Dennison for drawing that out. Councillor Harper and I had conversations with the club. The club came and made public comment to us this morning, and now they have answered the question so that we're all on the same page. They've got around 30 to 40,000 that they can put in from the club's funds. If we put in 10,000, hopefully they'll be able to access $10,000 elsewhere. And so I hope that allays the councillors' concern in moving this, that the quantum is appropriate. But I would encourage councillors, if you do feel 10,000 isn't enough, pass or fail, please move an amendment to put a higher amount on that figure, and I will support you. The 10,000 figure is absolutely right, Councillor Dennison, what we thought would be politically palatable, appreciating this is unbudgeted expenditure. But if around this table councillors wanted to put more in, I have absolutely no objection to that. What we're trying to do here is support Kiwi Canoe Polo, and if this table has an appetite to support it at a high level, I certainly have that appetite and I'm game. The second concern that the councillor raised in moving this amendment, or second suggestion the councillor raised, is that they don't get the money now, they'll start applying now. Well, my argument to that would be, the sooner they have commitment from council that we're going to support it, the easier it is and the sooner they can start accessing that external funding. Because if we wait 8 months, all we do, if you genuinely are sitting here today feeling like you'll support this at the annual budget, why would we wait 8 months over $10,000? I don't understand. I really don't understand. Why was this not at this year's annual budget? Because we hadn't had the needs assessment back to us in time for this year's annual budget. Had we had that been in, I certainly would have supported moving to put it in this year's annual budget. So there's no, misalignment here. It's just a matter of the fact that the report came in 2 months after the annual budget was approved. And if we seriously cannot be flexible over $10,000 to wait 8 months, I truly wonder why we are here, councillors. It is such a small amount of money, and to make them wait 8 months for that is just silly. Why would we put money in if the club has 70,000 in the bank? Well, the answer is quite simple. We will be a key partner in delivering this, no matter what, really. It's either going to go on our land or we'll facilitate it going on someone else's land. I'm not suggesting we will put the full amount in, but I'm quite confident that we would be one of the partners in being involved in this. And so, absolutely, we should put some money in so that, as our officer said, that we are around the table when they set out the scope of what we're looking at and what we're doing, so that we work and walk with them the whole step of the way. To walk with them on the needs assessment and then say, oh, nah, go off on your own and do the feasibility and business case, we don't care, just come back to us at the end, would be very, very odd. So please, councillors, I've got some great things I'd love to talk to you about the substantive, and I'll look forward to that, but please do not support the amendment. I appreciate where the councillor's coming from, but the two key concerns that are raised, I believe, have been allayed through this debate, and I hope we could be flexible enough to support the substantive.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, why are we here? What a great question, Councillor Wood. 11:54, and we're on the second substantive item of the day. We are here for one simple purpose, and that's to make sure that we get the best outcome for the whole community in time. And my concern is that what we might set up with setting off one part of the aquatics community at a pace and in a direction is a disconnect in terms of timing, potentially a disconnect in terms of location, potentially an escalation in terms of final cost. So yes, only $10,000 today, but the question is about the build cost, the co-location, getting it all joined up and getting it right. And I have every sympathy and appreciation for Canoe Polo's passion for their sport and desire to move as fast as they can. In their position, I'd be doing exactly the same thing, but I think we need to look at how we move together for the whole community. This needs to be opened up for an annual budget consideration. I can also think of a great number of organizations in and beyond sport that would welcome a notice of motion that would put $10,000 into their cause. This city is full of worthy causes, and we need to make sure that those worthy causes are considered through the relevant process, which is the annual budget. And I commend Councillor Bowen and Councillor Hancock for bringing this to us. I'll certainly be supporting the amendment.
All right. Do you need a right of reply for that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in reply to some of the points that have been made, thank you for the discussion about whether $10,000 is the right amount. Maybe I was listening differently. What I took from that was actually Canoe Polo can probably fund this themselves, as gym sports have already done. So if there's an urgent need to get on with it, they can. What also I heard, why wait 8 months over $10,000? Simply because this is unbudgeted expenditure. We've not talked to our community about this at all. There has been no community consultation about the need for a new facility for Canoe Polo in our city. So recognising that there are strong opinions about this, and opinions from our community outside of Canoe Polo. And credit to Kiwi Canoe, who have talked today about the issues they have with some of their neighbours, who I'm assuming would very much support you building your own facility, not in their backyard. Might even be willing to contribute financially to that, I hazard a guess. So for me, there is too much unknown that we might flush out through taking that through an annual budget. And of course, we talk about the annual budget as being, well, 9-10 months away, or maybe 8 months away. I think we all know that the annual budget probably starts in December, and these conversations will be ongoing, and there's opportunity to work with the community as we build that annual budget to see what's practical, what's doable, and how we best set up this sporting code and all of our sporting codes and others for success. I don't think actually that's a lot to ask when you're talking about ratepayer money.
All right. We will vote to the amendment now, please.
I don't think I have. We're usually quite good at one, so I don't think I've got it. Some people haven't spoken.
And it's passed. 9 votes for and 7 against. So we now put that into the substantive. Are there any more comments to this part? Councillor Wood.
Well, Mr Mayor, I have to say I'm disappointed, but anyway, it's still better than nothing. So the speech I was going to make before we got into the amendment around why we should do this in the first place is a fewfold, and I think it's still relevant because the councillors have concerns around the combination of the two stages, and I'm pleased to see that survived the amendment. I think if we start with the first part of this, I'm sure everybody around the table can agree that the lagoon is not an adequate long-term solution for Kiwi Canoe Polo. I think that was borne out quite well through the needs assessment. It doesn't suit the neighbours. They were in here pleading with us at a long-term plan, saying, could we look at doing something? We're losing competitions, and frankly, I certainly wouldn't want to play in that lagoon. My God, you look at the duck excrement and all sorts of things. You're braver people than I am.
Councillor, the water quality has just improved. You can go and have a swim in it if you want to.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr Mayor. I might take you up on that offer afterwards. So anyway, look, it's certainly not a place that I think is adequate, and I'm sure we can all agree on that in general. What my key argument is in terms of combining the feasibility and business case is a fewfold. Firstly, is in questions to the officers, they made it really clear when I said, obviously, if the feasibility said there's no way we could possibly do this, we're not going to then spend 30 grand developing a business case that says we can't possibly do this. The business case will simply say, well, having looked at the feasibility, it can't be done. And so that there's no risk here in saying, in setting a course of combining the two, that we would end up spending tens of thousands of dollars on something that isn't feasible. So all this sets in place is, if the case shows it is feasible, which I believe it would, then what they come to us at the end with is, here's the plan, when do you want to fund it? And that was, Councillor Harper and I, one of our key concerns in getting this on the table now, is our long-term plan, as Councillor Bowen highlighted about the annual budget, is not 20 months away, it'll be starting in 10 months. And so if we only start funding to develop this case in 8 months, I don't reckon they're going to have in 2 months' time a fundable program that we can then slot into our long-term plan, which is a concern I would have liked to have borne out. So I reckon that possibly with the amendment we've put, we're going to lose the opportunity to consider this for the 27-37 long-term plan, and it'll end up being the one after that, but so be it, it is what it is. What we're doing here is not abnormal, and I really want to emphasise that point. As Councillor Naylor said, and asked her questions, you know, will this entice other organisations to come and ask for funding? Well, at the same level we've already done. We've funded the bowls assessment, we've funded the sports assessment. This is just a part of our standard practice. In fact, the whole reason that I was even intrigued in this notice motion in the first place was because it felt very odd that we had a needs assessment come to us with no next step. It just said, oh, here's the needs assessment, that's it. I mean, in what sort of framework do we not have a check-in at council? We should check in at council and say, is this a project you want to proceed with or is it not? Because quite rightly, if the sports co go off and spend all their own money developing a case, and actually there's no appetite at the council table to do it, well, then that's a waste of their time and money, as well as a waste of ours. So I think it's completely appropriate we have a check-in at the council table on whether or not to support this. So councillors, this is not abnormal. The combination of the programs is also not particularly abnormal, as the Mayor's outlined, but one of the questions that I asked at the time about Hauki Tour was, could we combine steps? And the answer from the officers I recall was, yes, absolutely. I agree we need to be flexible. I mean, if you're talking about a $30 million brand new pool, absolutely, do your three-step process. That is completely right. That is a huge investment. If we're talking $2.5, $3 million for a dugout, I think there's a really good case to be made that we could look at being more efficient. Why cost a community charitable organisation 20 grand that we don't need to? So, although I'm disappointed this is going to the annual budget rather than we must make a decision now, I'll support it. And I hope councillors' concerns are somewhat allayed on the benefits of combining these two phases. As the Mayor said, it is still in line with that process, it's just putting two of them together. And hopefully by doing this, we might create a pathway for other sports that for low-level investments, we've got a case where we could say, we've combined this one, it works. If it's under $5 million, we can look at this pathway. If it's over 5, we go down and do the full hog. So hopefully we can support this, councillors, as a sensible proposal.
Councillor Harpedy, right reply there.
Thank you. I just want to give a standing order education notice to Councillor Barrett that any councillor can put up a standing order notice of motion under 2.7.1. So you had a fear that none of us could put a standing order notice up. So anybody can do that at any time. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of education there, Councillor Barrett. Anybody can put one up at any time. But to get back to the matter at hand, I too am a little bit concerned about the timing of this. I think putting a feasibility and business case together in 10 months is going to be tough for the officers. So good luck, Anne-Marie, being able to do that in a 10-month period for the annual budget process. But I hope we can do it in time, but hopefully with the efforts of the club, you might be able to do it with the club and get a good robust process in. But I hope we can all support this, and good for the club, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I hope we can all support it. So thanks, everybody.
Councillor, that was a right of reply, so we're just going to vote on this. All right, so we've got the substantive up there, which is now referring it to the annual budget. Yep. Good vote, please. It's passed 16 votes for and none against. All right. We might just do a couple of quick ones before we... So I feel like we're getting through things. Okay, so ask Perrine to come forward. Perrine Green, property officer, just around Fitzherbert Park, and the proposal to grant an easement on the reserve land to Powerco. Page 33.
Morning, Mayor and councillors. I'm aware that there's a fair bit to get through, so happy to take this report as read. Happy to take any questions.
All right, Councillor Johnson.
Is there any reason why we shouldn't just approve this?
No, there is no reason. It can be approved as mentioned. It's not under the Reserves Act, it is under the Palmerston North Reserves Act, which doesn't outline any requirement for public consultation for easements.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Thanks, Perrine. Perhaps I've missed it in your report. The easement to be granted will be granted in favour of council or Powerco?
Powerco.
Is that the only option open to council, that it has to be granted to Powerco, or can it be granted to council given we own the land?
When an easement is, gives right to not the owner of the land, so Powerco will have rights to convey electricity on council land. That is what will be put on the title. If that answers your question, councillor?
Yes. So I understand that the easement gives Powerco the access to the property, but the ownership of the easement doesn't have to sit with Powerco. It could still remain with council. And the only reason I'm asking that question, Perrine, is that in terms of any future development on that site, if the easement is granted in favour of Powerco, then Powerco will be able to determine what happens on the rest of the land surrounding the easement that is owned by council. Is that your understanding?
So the easement will only be for the area that's outlined in the aerial photo on the report. So they will have no other rights to the rest of the land. When the easement is registered on the title, there will be a survey included that they only have rights to that particular 7 square metres.
So figure 2.
Yes.
Where it is. Cool, awesome. Thanks, Perrine. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team. I just want to bear out, my read of the report is that we don't have to get them to do a resource consent, but we're choosing to. Can I just understand, for a 1.17 square metre site, why we're requiring them to get a resource consent? That seems excessive.
The resource consent requirement is due to being located near the protected trees on site.
Yes, but I recall in the report it was something along the lines of the reserve classification meant that we didn't have to, but we could if we wanted to. It was an option of ours, wasn't it? Sorry.
We do not have to go out for public consultation on the proposal. However, they would still be required to seek a resource consent. The only point where they wouldn't need a resource consent, sorry, I'm not too sure. I'll just double check.
It's point 1.2 in the report.
In the main section of the report, you'll note under the risks of option 2 that if we didn't do the easement, they would still be allowed, if the equipment was to fail, they do have rights to come on site and to fix that equipment without any resource consent. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
I think I'm perhaps getting two things confused here, so I just want to be clear. Are they required to get a resource consent no matter what to do this work, or are we?
Yes, unless the equipment fails.
So point 1.2, when it talks about Fitzherbert Park not being subject to the Reserves Act, and therefore, there's no process set out for the easement.
I might just get the CE to it. I think we're overthinking this.
Through the chair, and I'll just check planning team and that as well anyway, but I think it's just because it's the proximity to the notable trees which are in our district plan.
Okay. All right, I think I'll leave it
there. Councillor Fitzgerald again.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Thanks for that, Chief Executive. I was just wanting to confirm that the resource consent provides a protection for the trees beyond the easement development. Yeah. Through the chair, it's obviously the need to go through a resource consent process so that they do protect our trees when they're actually installing their infrastructure. So that'll be the reason for it.
Good. All right. Thanks, Prane. We've done with questions. Thank you for your report. Okay, we've got some recommendations there around Fitzherbert Park and the proposal to grant an easement on reserve land to Powerco. One is that council approve notifying the public of the proposal to grant an easement on Fitzherbert Park to Fitzherbert Ave, Palmerston North to Powerco to convey electricity using the process set out in the section of the Reserves Act. And two, that the council note that the land affected by the easement for Powerco is described in the Lot 2 DP 7988. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. If there's no questions, we will vote, please. That's passed, 16 votes for and none against. All right. Scott, if I could get you up for number 12, which is around the 2025-26 REM budget update. It's on page 41 of your papers.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. Also bringing Cam to the table as well, just given the topic. So I'll pass over to him to lead in and I can chip in with anything else. Good afternoon. Kia ora koutou, Mayor and councillors. Just wanting to bring this paper to you today. As you'll recall, when we went through the budgeting process around remuneration, some decisions were made around what was requested and setting a budget that was less than that. Effectively, that creates a remuneration cap. At the time of adopting the budget, we were aware of a unforeseen but known change to the KiwiSaver scheme by the government, and the impacts that that would potentially have on us. I can confirm the remuneration budget is going to be tight to manage this year to accommodate that extra constraint on us challenging. The second part, I guess, to this is at the same time we are obviously doing work around the water services transition program. There's been a role that's been put in place across 3 councils that is effectively leading the transition efforts. That's come with some funding from DIA to help, I guess, offset some of those costs. But in terms of correctly accounting for that and enabling backfill for what was BAU activities, we're requesting that we lift the revenue and the remuneration budget to offset each other. Just also bring to your attention, and no request at this stage, but just noting at this point in time, it is likely that that there will be efforts required by staff in terms of the transition to the water program, things like assessing the items for transfer agreements, assets, and so on and so forth. Not in a position to tell you exactly what that looks like here today, but just bringing it to your attention that we may need to come back to you if that's the case. The approach to transition, and you do have a budget in this current program to loan fund efforts pertaining to the transition for water services in the current budget, but that's currently sitting wholly against professional services line. So there may be also some staff input and perhaps a need to backfill some staff if it becomes necessary. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. The recommendation number 1, the increase of 100,000 to cover the extra KiwiSaver costs, where is that money coming from, given that we've already rated for the operation expenditure this year?
Yeah, good question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would effectively be unbudgeted. I guess as we try to manage the budget as a whole through the year, we would be looking at ways to see if we can recoup that in other ways, but we haven't been able to identify where that would be at this point in the year.
Okay. And then the point 2, recommendation 2, is that basically government's giving us the money and you want to be able to spend it on this remuneration? Is that the basic?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just in terms of the first recommendation for the KiwiSaver contribution increase, what's been asked for there is 100,000. The 0.5% on the 62 million is the communication with you.
comes out a bit under 80,000. So I'm just wondering why 100,000 additional has been asked for.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We've worked it off, I guess when we did the workings for this, we worked it off what our gross superannuation budget is, and that includes all positions, including capitalised positions and so forth. You're right that you could expect that perhaps a portion relating to capital programs are funded by the capitalised labour. As the budget currently sits, we would need to hit pretty close to 100% on our capitalised remuneration assumption this year to be within our remuneration budget, just for context.
And so can you, are you suggesting that you've asked for the additional 22,000 to cover the KiwiSaver for the capitalised positions? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, yes.
And so how much capitalised positions have we got, and what does that equate to what's needed for KiwiSaver?
So I think we worked out that we would need approximately, I guess, when you take into account all the capitalised roles and so forth, probably looking at the $91,000 mark, rough change. There is 6 point something million of capitalised labour assumed, I think. 6.3, I think.
So if 6.3 million would mean that we're talking about 68.3 million that was needed for KiwiSaver?
No.
Sorry, so I
the 80,000 that you identified through a question was for the net remuneration budget. If you gross it up to include capitalised labour, then you'd need to add to the request.
Yeah, so my question was, so we've got 62 million there for employee remuneration, because I understand that elected members don't get KiwiSaver, is that correct? Yeah. So if we're adding 62 million plus 6.3 for the capitalised labour, then that would be 68.3 million?
62.3 million is the amount less the elected member remuneration, I believe. The total budget 63.3 million, and taking off the elected member remuneration, I think 62.3.
So where do you get the 62.3? Because this paper says 62 million and 86, 62086. I'm just wondering where the 0.3 million is coming from.
So when we were going through the deliberations for the annual budget, we anticipated carry forwards. One of those carry forwards was in relation to the digital transformation program, and we were looking to be fairly well underspent in the 24-25 year, and that carry forward was loaded in, and 300,000 of that related to employee remuneration for the team to deliver that program.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess the only additional question I have is I thought capitalised positions were funded from debt, so why would the KiwiSaver component not also be funded through debt?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, you could make that decision to do so. Just noting that again you're relying upon pretty close to 100% of that target being met, and in the previous year we did fall under that target, so that we'd have to come back to you if we're seeing any signs of issues there.
Okay. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
All right. That is the questions done. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Scott. So we've got 3 recommendations. Council increase the REM budget for 25-26 by 100,000 to allow for increase in KiwiSaver contribution rates from 1 October 2026, which the government imposed. And then 2, that Council increase the following budgets to fund the Executive Director role for implementation of the Water Services Council controlled organisation, noting that this cost is neutral. A, REM expenditure budget increase of 250,000, and B, government operating grant revenue budget increase of 250, cancelling each other out. And then 3, that council note the remuneration budget for the 25-26 year may need to increase if the work on the water services council-controlled organisation impacts existing workloads. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Thanks to the officers for bringing this forward. I mean, some of this is, as I say, consequences of government decisions. So we need to do what we need to do here. So I'm happy to move that and hope you'll vote for it. Or vote, please. Okay, that's passed, 16 votes for and none against. All right, we'll get one more quick one out of the way, and we look like we're doing well. Is the number 13, I'll ask Kathy Todd to come forward. This is around the Clearview Reserve, and this is a request to reinstate a small capital budget for the 25-26 year around the reserve. It's on page 45 of your papers, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. This one that comes before you is part of a program that during the annual budget discussions was postponed. At the time, in response to council questions, we did indicate that there was a risk that developments that often it's difficult to find the timing around, one may come forward and we may not have the funding available. This is an example of that occurring. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Kathy. So it was always planned, it's just been pushed into different years.
That is correct. This particular subdivision has been delayed over many years, and it's sat through many annual budgets and been carried forward. It's at this time that it's come to the point where they're now asking council to fulfil their commitment to plant the reserve according to the landscape plan. Because they want to get titles and then get the 25 odd sections on the market. That's correct, but also there was, as the report discusses, this is one of those ones where we had developer agreements as well, and part of that, and in reporting to council in the past, we undertook that we would plant our reserve in a particular way. That's not usual in subdivisions these days. As the landowner, we determine that, but this was part of an overall landscape plan that Eileen put forward. Yep, great, thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Just checking, is this one of the growth programs?
No, it isn't. This program is a separate program that is not related to growth because it was a catch-all program for reserves that we had that were still needed development but hadn't been able to be captured in the developer contributions programs, and that's why we bundled them together. There's a few examples around the city of these reserves where the subdivision has come to a halt, but they've been around for many years.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's questions done. Thanks, Kathy. So, colleagues, this is around Clearview Reserve, request to reinstate the capital budget. Recommendations to us are that we revoke clause 80.13-25. It was around B, deferring project 1853, development of existing reserves, 85,000 to the 26-27 annual budget. And 2, the council agreed to bring the program forward again, 1853, development of existing reserves, 85,000. From 26-27 year to the 25-26 year in order to develop Clearview Reserve in the 25-26 year in line with commitments made at the time of related subdivision consents. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Colleagues, I had the developer or representatives of the developer's estate come and see me about this. It's a relatively small piece of work to be done, but it is critical. They can't get titles. It's about $7 million worth of land in 26 odd sections. It's pretty critical. This is the Eileen Fair estate, or the Fair Developments estate, and I then went and spoke to the officers and they said, well, actually you kicked this for touch in the annual plan, or annual budget. So unforeseen consequences there. We weren't that sure what was going on, but now they're ready to go and the city absolutely needs those sections. So I'm hoping you can support this. If you're out there looking at sections, you'll know that there's nothing there. So we desperately need it. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just after your comments, I thought it'd be worth saying this is a great opportunity to highlight some open-mindedness of council colleagues. I proposed that we delayed it by a year. Officers said potentially development would happen and it'd need to come back, and now it's come back. I think that's great. So I'll be fully in support of doing it, but it doesn't evidence that we shouldn't defer things. It just means that we need to be flexible when sands change, and I'm very happy to be flexible.
All right, I don't need to write a reply. Let's vote. That has passed 16 votes for and none against. All right, I'm going to stop us there because I think we've done well. We're through to number 14 and we'll have a break and we'll be back in the chamber